Yes, that is the idea that, because I know when I was struggling with C-PTSD, I thought I was never going to overcome it. I would never get better. I would always be feeling this way. I'd always be stuck this way. And I think if I had read about somebody who had overcome C-PTSD, it would have gone, oh, it is possible. So that's the reason why I want it for other people, is so that they can say, oh, it is possible now. You can heal. It is possible to heal from C-PTSD now. You just need a therapist who specializes in trauma and has the skills such as EMDR. It is possible. It's not like how it was 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, there is hope. There is definitely hope.
Everybody, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. I have someone from one of my favorite places in the world that I would love to visit someday. Fran Stalley is here from Nottingham. What? Yeah, anyway, so many things that I would love to talk about, but that's going to be a different topic, not about today. Fran, welcome to the podcast. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
How are you?
It's lovely to be here. I'm really glad to be here.
Okay, so I need to learn, can you teach me an English word that I can use? Because I know I've heard people say brilliant a lot. People in England say that a lot. Brilliant, like great, we would say. Is there a word you could teach me that I could use every day? Come on. Something that I can use.
You've just dropped me on. You just dropped me.
Just like that. Is it true that everyone uses the word brilliant a lot? Is that?
There's another word, but I don't know how suitable it is for your podcast.
Let's go. Sure. Let's do it.
Okay. So bollocks. There are multiple. It has multiple definitions.
Okay. Can you give me one of the easier ones that are more common, I guess, or whatever you want?
It's bollocks means that it's broken.
Oh. Okay. So if I drop glass on the floor and it breaks, it's bollocks.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to write that one down. It's bollocks. All right. Okay. You got it. Okay. See, I've learned something already. We're done. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you, everybody, for listening to Living the Next Chapter. It's bollocks. No, we're going to continue. So, thank you so much. Okay, so I got all my silliness out. Again, I've worked all night, and now I'm kind of loopy because I'm half between sleeping and daytime. But again, I love having time with you today, Fran. We have you on to talk about your book, talk about all the great things that you're doing, and you're helping people. Can you introduce yourself to everybody listening and watching, and let people know a little bit about who Fran is? That'd be great to kind of start with that.
Yeah, so I'm an expert by experience in complex trauma. That means that I have a history of C-PTSD from childhood abuse, thanks to both my parents, and I have largely overcome it. So it's not something that affects me anymore in my day-to-day life. There are occasional blips, but largely I'm able to, enjoy my life, and I'm rebuilding it pretty much from scratch. And so my work is helping other people with a history of C-PTSD to rebuild their lives as well, once they've had therapy.
So, Fran, can you explain to me what PTSD is compared to C-PTSD? What is the difference between those?
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, tends to be just a single isolated traumatic incident, such as a road traffic accident.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And that would, and it's more likely to be in adulthood than childhood, whereas C-PTSD It's multiple traumas, and usually in childhood.
And the C stands for complex?
Complex, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then just the word complex by itself means...
It's complex. It means that it's complex to treat. It's much more difficult to treat than PTSD.
So is C-PTSD more evident and then treated as adults, or is it evident and treated during childhood as well?
Oh, if you can get it treated in childhood, you're a lot better off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't heard it as common as just PTSD.
Yeah, I think people are more aware of PTSD.
Okay.
And but the C-PTSD tends to be childhood abuse or multiple traumas in adulthood.
So the people that you are you're helping and you're working with based on the things that you've lived through, what kind of things are people experiencing with this in a day-to-day setting as they kind of work through and try to heal?
So it's the impact that it had on my life is that I would have what are called feeling flashbacks. And these would just be really intense, really strong feelings that would come seemingly out of nowhere. But they did have a trigger, but I never knew what the trigger was. And they would knock me for six, and they would knock me for six for days, sometimes weeks at a time.
So can you give me an example of one of those feelings?
Very intense, overwhelming fear, perhaps, would be one of them. Deep distress, those kinds of things.
So were you experiencing this, or was it prevalent as a child, or are you speaking more as an adult now?
It was it would have been prevalent as a child, yes, but my parents are very kind of just pushed it under the carpet, acted it as though, this isn't, we don't act like this isn't okay, even though they were the cause of it.
Okay, so speaking cause-wise, what kind of things can cause this in the life of a child?
So abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, neglect. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so
but it tends to be people who end up with C-PTSD tend to be ones with what they call a disorganized attachment. And so that's children with parents who are neglectful or abusive. If you have loving parents, there is a protective effect.
Oh, okay. Can we explain that a little bit further then?
If you have love, if a child has loving, kind, supportive, nurturing parents, and a distressing incident happens to them, they are protected.
Oh.
They don't tend to get the PTSD.
Oh. Okay.
They found that people with what they call a disorganized attachment. They never knew whether they were loved or not. They're the ones that tend to get the PTSD as adults.
How long has research been going into C-PTSD? Is it something more recent?
I think it's since the Vietnam War.
Okay.
Yeah. And then but it's only like the last 20 years or so that, in my experience, that people have really started to understand it.
Can you share a little bit about the people that you work with and kind of maybe a little bit of the process to help people in this situation?
That I do, or that
Yeah.
So I'm not a therapist.
No.
So I'm helping people after they've received therapy.
Okay. Okay.
And so that they've healed their traumas, and they've still got to sort out like their finances, their home life, their relationships, their friendships. It's kind of rebuilding their lives. Their lives are now unshackled. They're now free of the trauma.
Okay.
But because it affects every part of their lives, they're having to rebuild it. So it's kind of helping them with kind of work, finances, that kind of thing.
So I'm sure this varies for different people, but how long does it take to kind of rebuild from something traumatic like this?
Well, it's taken me 6 years so far.
6 years so far.
Yeah.
So far, yeah. You
Yeah.
keep that open-ended.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think it's just an ongoing process? It's going to take quite some time then?
So in my life, so I've noticed that kind of there are certain areas that have rapidly improved very quickly, very easily, and then other areas that have taken longer. So my work has taken the longest, and my relationships have been the easiest and have come along the quickest. And my finances now, so kind of, the budgeting, knowing to put money in a separate bank account, that kind of thing, that's now easy. Because the reason why people struggle with things, a history of trauma, you can't think long range.
Okay.
So you can't plan. You can't see and you can't think into the future and imagine what's going to happen in, where you want to be 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the line. That's not available to you. It's really hard to describe, but a foreshortened future is a symptom of PTSD.
So with all the things that have gone on in the world with the pandemic, I've noticed that you mentioned that you help people over Zoom.
Yes, I do.
And working with people that way. Have you found it challenging to do that over Zoom compared to how it was before the pandemic?
No, because I was always working over Zoom.
Oh, was it always Zoom? Okay.
Yes. That's always how. And I'm used to working over Zoom because I actually had therapy over Zoom. Okay. So it wasn't something that was new to me.
Okay. So when people connect with you, you're not limited by a geographic area. You can work with people.
I tend to work with people in the UK simply because of for insurance reasons.
Okay. So how do people connect with you then? How do people find you? Is it through their therapy process that people then connect with you after the fact?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. And through my book as well. People have contacted me through my email address that's in my book.
So do you build relationships with these therapists as well then, as kind of an additional resource to work with them?
I have worked with therapists. Yes, I have. Yes. And I've also given talks to university students about my experiences of the mental health system for C-PTSD.
Okay. So let's talk about the book then. The title of your book?
It's called Childhood Trauma Recovery, the email conversations with my therapist that helped me overcome childhood PTSD.
Great. And so tell us a little bit about the book. When was the book released?
The book was released in September last year, and it was my lockdown project during the pandemic. So it was kind of, how can I keep myself sane?
Yeah.
I'm, stuck in the house, and I thought I'm going to give myself something to focus on. And I had all these emails that I'd had, the conversations that I'd had via email with my former therapist. And I put them all, it was 2 years worth, and I put them all together, and I got his permission, and I wrote a prologue and I wrote an epilogue, and I sent them to somebody I knew who was an editor, and I said, do you think this is publishable? And she came back and she said, yeah, I do.
It's a very unique way of writing a book.
and she offered to edit it for me as well. So I was like, oh, thank you.
So does it kind of feel, when you read the book, does it feel like you're witnessing a conversation between two people?
Yes. And you can see the relationship develop over the course of the book. So it starts off just kind of like the mechanics of I need therapy, and then towards the end, you can see how the relationship has evolved and the depth and that kind of thing. And generally, people seem to find it quite compelling to read.
It was nice because you could then, I would anticipate you can see the journey unfold in front of you. You can kind of see kind of those breakthroughs and those, unlocking some of those things together in therapy.
Yes. And people have said that there are things in there that they have found helpful for themselves. Because, I mean, the therapist was a clinical psychologist. So the advice he was giving me is actually useful for other people as well. Although the caveat is that obviously it was intended just for me.
Yeah. So on that topic, is there something that you can share from the book and from that experience that you find is helpful for people that maybe might be listening to this?
A mantra helps to protect the mind from itself. So if you're really stressed, you're really anxious, and your mind's churning, if you just keep saying something soothing to yourself, like, I'm safe, I'm going to be okay, this is all going to blow over eventually, you can just keep repeating that to yourself. It does help. I've done that. When my mind was just in turmoil, I'm safe, it's okay, it's all going to be okay.
That's great. Okay, so the whole idea of mindset too, then, and what you focus on and what your mind focuses on is kind of what your mind feeds you. So if by doing that mantra and by putting that in front of yourself as a reminder to yourself in the process, your mind then reinforces that.
Yeah, but right. It also stops your mind from coming up with terrible situations. If you're constantly imagining all the things that can possibly go wrong, then a mantra just helps to ground you.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. So I guess at the beginning of this process with your therapist, you weren't thinking about writing a book, were you?
No. Although, I mean, I wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. So, it's just very strange how it worked out that we ended up, with a book.
It's interesting because I would love listening to the authors explain how the book became, how it started, where the idea came from.
Yeah.
And this just seems so natural and so organic. This is me living and be able to capture that. And that's what people, I think, enjoy as a reader, is being a part of the story and seeing the progress and following along. And in the process of following your journey, it helps other people at the same time. That's kind of the idea for you. Yeah.
Yes, that is the idea, that because I know when I was struggling with C-PTSD, I thought I was never going to overcome it. I would never get better. I would always be feeling this way. I'd always be stuck this way. And I think if I had read about somebody who had overcome C-PTSD, it would have gone, oh, it is possible. So that's the reason why I want it for other people, is so that they can say, oh, it is possible then. If somebody else has done it, then it means that I can do it. And actually, with the C-PTSD, there are certain therapies which work really well for it. And then there are others that don't help at all. And I think the reason why I wasn't helped for such a long time was that the therapist that I saw didn't know how to treat it.
So what are some of those therapies that do help then? So
EMDR is one of the therapies that stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. That is a therapy of choice for CPTSD, and it needs to be coupled with a therapist who specializes in treating CPTSD.
So in that therapy, can you explain a little bit of how that kind of works?
I can. It's just that people will go, yeah, and how does that work then? It's they call it bilateral stimulation. So it's kind of they use eye movements. We say it's just moving your eye from side to side, or buzzes in the hands, or alternate beeps in the ears.
Okay.
They think it mimics REM sleep. But it seems that how it works is that it processes the memory. So you still remember it, but rather than it going to get stuck in the, traumatic memories seem to get stuck in the brain. They don't get stored as ordinary memories. They just seem to get stuck. And if they're triggered, the brain acts as though it's reliving the memory as though it's happening in real time.
Wow. Okay.
So you don't go, oh, but this isn't happening now. It's this was in the past. The brain is acting as though it's happening now. That's why it's so distressing, because you don't have the ability to go, oh, this is in the past. This is over. Whereas once you've had the EMDR, it's stored as a proper memory. So you can still remember it, but the distress isn't there.
It almost sounds like in my mind, like listening to you speak, it sounds like computer storage almost, in the fact that it's in this file folder and we want to move it to this file folder.
Yes.
And that kind of process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds very okay. That makes sense to me from that perspective, for sure. So I think we mentioned earlier in the beginning that if you're a child,
I would want to say a little bit more about that, in the sense that an analogy is the like the human body is built to heal itself. So if you cut yourself, if it gets infected, it won't heal. Mm-hmm. But if it's clean, the wound is clean, it will heal. Well, the brain is the same. Is that if the trauma is like the infection of the brain, and if you clean that trauma, the brain will heal itself. And that has been my experience. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, exactly. When you cut yourself, it makes complete sense. Yeah. So going back to the children's side, you were mentioning that if you were able to do this as a child, would you say it's more effective or more?
It's much quicker. Children process much, much faster.
And is that because children don't have the adult defenses that we have, and all of our?
Probably something like that. And also because they don't. The problem with processing as an adult is that you build up this didn't work last time, therefore it's not going to work this time for me. And you have like the compounding traumas of doing things which are harmful as an adult because of the trauma that you experienced as a child. So then it kind of affects your self-trust and your self-esteem and that kind of thing.
So do you primarily work with adults yourself, or are you working with...
no, I don't work with children. No.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So any success stories that come to mind apart from the process you're on yourself? Anybody that's you can think of that kind of came to you and you're working with, and you're just seeing so many good things happening as a result of therapy and also working with you as well?
I had one woman who emailed me. She'd had more therapists than I had. I didn't think that was possible. And I put her in touch with a therapist who specialized in trauma, and she said, wow, yeah, I'm definitely noticing that it's helping me. I mean, it's a long process. It's not an instant fix.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only been 6 months, but she's definitely noticing a big difference in how she feels compared to how she has felt in the past.
So where
and
do you
and another client who I don't think I can take credit for, how dedicated he is to improving his life. I would love to take credit for it, but I can't.
It's nice to be part of the process.
It is nice to be part of the process, yeah.
So where do you see the gaps today then? Because you're just mentioning, people going to multiple therapists and not getting the answers they need.
The gap I see is that mental health is treated in the opposite way to physical health. Physical health is treated by specialists like cardiologists, oncologists, not generalists. Mental health tends to get treated by generalists and not specialists.
That's an interesting point. I never thought of it that way. Yes.
So if you have a complex mental health condition, such as C-PTSD, see somebody who specializes in treating that. Because the odds are that if you don't, you either won't be helped or you'll be made worse.
Well, that's sobering to hear that, for sure.
Yeah. And it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
It's common for people with a history of C-PTSD to go and see therapists and not be helped.
So what about, Fran, for family members and a community around you that want to support somebody who is going to therapy and working on this in their life? How could somebody outside be an ally and a support to you or somebody in the process?
Learn about trauma. There are books, so read up on trauma and how it affects the brain and how it affects the person, because they will become understandable to you. Because the thing about trauma is that their responses can seem very erratic and out of the blue and not make sense. And that's the trauma speaking, is because their trigger can be anything. And if they don't know what their trigger is, they can't say, they can't explain that why it's such a problem for them. If that makes sense. Like if you know that heights are frightening for you, you know to avoid heights. But if you don't know that something is going to be frightening, you don't know to avoid it
until you're there.
Until you're there, Yes.
And then it's too late because now you're faced with it. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I'm thinking too, just as an ally, as somebody helping somebody or being a support, lots of grace, patience, love, space to experience and to become stronger. I think that's maybe some of the things that we can offer, is just how to be that ally and to be that source of strength. But as well, I guess there's some distance required.
What do you mean by distance?
Well, I just mean that you don't want somebody who's over you all the time. You want somebody to kind of give you a little bit of space so that you can kind of work through and develop and
ask them what they want. Ask the person, ask the individual person what it is that they would want.
Okay.
I think that's probably the best, because that's the best thing for them. Because what would help me isn't necessarily what would help somebody else, because we're all different.
That makes sense. That's great. So apart from your book, which we're going to obviously promote here on the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your book with us. Is there other resources? Is there information that people can find and search that can help them in the process of discovering this and working through this as a listener?
Oh, there are lots of really good. So Psych Central tends to have good information. Mind here in the UK that has helpful information.
Okay.
Yeah. Anything by Bessel van der Kolk is going to be really informative.
Okay, that's great.
Peter Levine, his work is also really helpful.
Absolutely. It's nice to hear other resources that authors suggest and people who are helping people can suggest, because again, you don't know who's listening to this episode.
Yeah.
And it just might be the beginning of a journey for them to find some healing and to start. And your book's going to help with that, which is great.
I hope so.
Yeah. Fran, it's so good to chat with you today. What is the best way, Fran, for somebody to connect with you or to maybe ask you a question about your book? Is there a way for people to contact you?
Yes, my email address is Fran Stalley expertpatient@gmail.com. That's all one word.
Expert patient. I like that. That's a very unique email address, and it says a lot. Very smart, Fran. I like that. So we'll definitely put that information into the show notes as well. So, Fran,
that's great.
I love to ask this question of authors because I find that authors and writers like yourself very thoughtful in how they present themselves. If you had one message, Fran, to anyone listening to this that clicked on this podcast episode because of the title, because of your book, what is your message to them today as we close off? What would you like to say to them?
You can heal. It is possible to heal from C-PTSD now. You just need a therapist who specializes in trauma and has the skills such as EMDR. It is possible. It's not like how it was 30, 40 years ago.
There is hope.
Yeah, there is hope. There is definitely hope.
And if you're feeling hopeless or you're feeling alone or you're feeling that you don't have a community to support you, there are people out there like Fran. Fran's book is out there to support you. Search it out. Find those people that can help, because there is somebody who will listen, will help, will support, and help you move forward in life. There's no reason to get stuck in this.
Yeah.
And there's people that can help you. So
yeah,
it's excellent. Thank you, Fran, so much for taking time today,
for
being vulnerable and sharing a little bit from your story as well. And my hope and my prayer for you is that you continue this journey and see much growth and great days ahead for you as well.
Thank you. Thank
you for helping people, Fran. Thank you for putting yourself out there to do that. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Excellent. So everyone, please check out Fran's information in the show notes as well, and all the information for Fran's book. And again, thank you so much for being on Living the Next Chapter, Fran.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's great to meet people that, again, have a wonderful story and that can take that story and help others. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Excellent. Hi guys, this is Dave from Living the Next Chapter, a podcast designed to connect authors and audiences. We're always on the lookout for our next interview. If you're an author, a publisher, and you have a book, whether you're just starting, whether you're halfway through writing, or it's all done and you want to tell the world, that's why we're here at Living the Next Chapter. Get in touch with us through livingthenextchapter.com, contact us, and let's set up some time together to discuss your book, to discuss your project, and how we can get you on the show. My name is Dave, and I would love to speak to you. So go to livingthenextchapter.com, and let's get over there together and discuss all the great things that you're up to as an author, as a publisher, and let's grow your audience together. Join us on livingthenextchapter.com for great authors and an audience that's eager to hear about what you're up to as an author and a publisher. Contact us today and let's get your book out in front of others. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.